If you put enough stress on a bone, it will snap, like this bamboo skewer. That is what is currently happening in the NIFB, the New Independent Fundamentalist Baptist Church. The pastors are all complaining about what the others are doing, preaching sermons against each other until the stress has become too much for a couple of them. And the NIFB has begun to fracture. One such pastor is Grayson Fritz. Remember Grayson Fritz, NIFB pastor that tried to get himself banned from YouTube by flaunting his hatred and bigotry? The pastor that brought us reverse consent, the idea that women need permission from their husbands to not have sex. Yeah, that guy. You know what? Fritz might actually be human. Even Fritz has had enough of Steve Anderson and all his hate. All Scripture Baptist has broken away from the NIFB. Let's look at what changed and what hasn't, and have a laugh at the infighting in the NIFB that has caused it to break apart. Let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I have a new patron to announce. Joey Menta is now a grandchild. Thank you for your support, Joey. Today, we see a new leaf being turned over by the hate-filled...
That's not what they died for!
Misogynistic...
Hey, the land is ruled by women.
Transphobic...
And this transgender movement...
Homophobic...
Hey, we live in a nation of fat and flat...
Grayson Fritz. I can't really be sure where it started, but the sermons going back and forth between Fritz and Anderson preaching against each other, from what I'm finding published, began about October 10th, when Fritz preached against Steve Anderson. Before you moan about having to endure these preachers, I had to listen to 3 hours of preaching from Fritz, 2 from Anderson, 1 from Thompson, and 5 from Shelley to find these clips. I worked backward from the complaints that Anderson and Fritz level against each other to find the start of the thread. Here it is.
There's a mentality that I've noticed that's rampant in the new IFB. And this mentality is, I've seen it creep into our church. And this mentality can creep into a soul-winning church.
Fritz then talked about a sermon preached by Jack Hyles in 1968, in which he said, if you are busy for God, if you are soul-winning, God will overlook sin, your demerits, because of your merits in going soul-winning. As a result, college students took this as a license to live as they wanted, so long as they were soul-winning. He then tells us that this is what is going on in the NIFB church.
And fix their issues, hey, but they disregard everything that you say, but you can bet your last dollar that they'll show up for every soul-winning event, every marathon from here to Timbuktu. That's all they care about. New IFBers are some of the nastiest, crudest, most unmerciful, venomous people, but everyone talks about their soul winning, don't they? They could treat others like garbage. They could be unforgiving. They behave themselves poorly online. They can backstab. They can gossip. They can lie. Hey, but at least they're winning souls for Jesus Christ, right?
Wow. Even Fritz now recognizes how awful this denomination is.
There's another church that I'm not going to mention the name of the church. There's divorce guys in this church, and they pray for the death of their ex-wives so that they can be pastors.
I don't even know what to say about this. Wow, the level of selfishness that has to be presented to be able to think that to preach is such a big deal that you want someone dead so that you can preach. This also tells you a lot about the pressures on pastors' wives in this denomination. You had better make hubby look good, or he can lose his job. Pastors had better be able to control their wives if they want to keep their jobs.
Can you, just think about the mentality of these clowns. They're there every soul, it's soul winning, soul winning, soul winning, soul winning, soul winning, soul winning, soul winning. That's all they talk about, soul winning, soul winning. They show up at all these marathons, go to all these soul winning events. every time. Oh, it's soul winning, soul winning, soul winning. And it's the same guys that are praying for their ex-wives to die. Use very coarse language. But think about the mentality of these people. If God answers my prayer and kills my ex-wife, seriously, think about it. I'm going to remarry and then be someone's pastor. What?
See, Fritz has developed a level of humanity. Even he can see that to wish for and pray for a person to die just so that you can serve God is immoral. It's insane. Now, if only he could see the same thing with regards to the stance on homosexuality.
It seems like the majority of my sermons here of late are take a look at yourself, audit yourself. Folks, if you don't fix your own problems, nobody's going to fix them. They're just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Maybe Fritz is starting to realize that there is no God. If you don't fix your own problems, there is no God that's going to do it for you. Steve Anderson has been banned from YouTube, but you can still find his sermons there if you know where to look. His church is Faithful Word Baptist. If you go to the church website, click on Preaching, then click on New Featured Channel, you get a message that the channel has been banned for violating policy. But then there's a list of Anderson's sermons and a link to where you can see them on YouTube. They are scattered over different channels. The two that I have taken clips from, A Wet Blanket on Soul Winning, is on the channel Banned Preaching. The other is on Ezekiel 11 on the channel Baptist Lives Matter. The Ezekiel 11 sermon has his first response to Fritz.
Oh, it's just so much pride, so prideful. Like this idiot, like this trash preacher who got up on Sunday and lied about a pastor and told a bold-faced lie about a new IFB pastor. And then I made a video and called him out. And I said, you know what? You're a liar. That never happened. Produce the name of the pastor. Produce the evidence. And what was his response? Pastor Anderson's mean. That was his response. I said, you've gotten up and slandered a man of God. There's only 10 of us, or 8 of us, or however many of us there are, dropping like flies. But, you know, there's 10 of us. And he's like, this new IFB pastor did X, Y, and Z, and, you know, I'm not going to name the name. I called him out and said, you know what? You're a liar, so say the name. Call it, come on. You're going to get up and lie to your church and say, this is the kind of garbage that's going on in the new IFB. I'm not going to say who. You won't say who because you lied. Because the story never happened, because you're a bold-faced liar. And then when he's called out and demanded, if you're going to throw out this accusation, then you better give the name. Where are the 2 witnesses? Who did it? The name! What's the name? And you know what's funny is that this guy's an ex-cop.
Anderson's last statement is what makes it clear that he's talking about Grayson Fritz. As Anderson said, there are only about 10 of them, and Fritz is an ex-cop. It's also ironic that Anderson is here complaining about Fritz not wanting to name names as a culprit, and Anderson isn't using Fritz's name either. Not that I think that he should. These sermons are public, and a sermon really isn't the place to be airing infighting about your denomination. An outside party might pick up on it and publish the whole debacle.
You know, people do things, but you know what? When you're going to get up and make a railing accusation, and you know what? By the way, when somebody makes an accusation and says, well, it's a pastor in the new IFB, but I'm not going to say which one, it's an attack on all of us. Because now some people are like, oh, I wonder if it's Pastor Anderson. And you know, these kind of vague attacks, it's still bearing false witness. Just because you keep it vague and say, well, it's one of these 12 people, I'm not going to say which one, but it's one of these 12 people. You know what? That's bearing false witness. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. How about that?
Interesting. So saying something about someone, even if true, is bearing false witness if you don't identify the person you are talking about by name. Yet that is exactly what you are doing here, Steve. Are you going to call yourself out now? This next clip is a few minutes later in the same sermon. It's off topic, but it's amusing, so I'm throwing it in.
Or if I just said, like, Chinese people like to eat rice and wear a pointed hat.
Don't know where he gets some of his ideas. Probably gets his culture from Disney movies.
And Lord God, I pray that no one would be discouraged from being a witness and being soul winning because of this false teacher, this garbage that was preached by this guy on Sunday where he's telling people not to go soul winning because they're too sinful. Lord, I'm so thankful that nobody is too sinful to go soul winning. If they're saved, Lord, that you'll actually that you'd actually give us that privilege, Lord, as saved Christians to witness for you.
He even uses his final prayer to take one last jab at Fritz. This is something I occasionally took issue with as a believer. We were taught that prayer is talking to God, yet so many prayers, like this one, is clearly aimed at the people there and not at God. That's okay, Anderson. We skeptics know that your God isn't real and praying to God isn't going to accomplish anything, so you have to pray to the congregation instead. I have to wonder if part of you understands this, and that's why you pray to the congregation and not to God. In response to this sermon by Anderson, Fritz puts out a short video renouncing his church's membership in the new Independent Fundamentalist Baptists a few days later. There is no link to this video in the description, as it was taken down shortly after I started this project. However, I do have a copy of the full video. If anyone wants a copy, please contact me on Twitter or by email. The audio on his video is inconsistent. I'll try to boost it where he is low.
Hey everybody, it's Pastor Fritz, All Scripture Baptist Church, Knoxville, Tennessee. I just wanted to make a quick video, kind of a response to a video that was made by Pastor Steven Anderson yesterday, where he references me. He doesn't mention me, and he references a sermon that I preached this past Sunday night. It's called Leave the Other Undone, and it's about people that they go soul winning, but that's about all they do. They'll use that sort of as a crutch, and they don't take care of other things in their life. So I was trying to admonish them to kind of take a look at all of their life and get things right with God, then go out soul winning. And again, that was the purpose of that sermon, and it was for my people here. It wasn't to the internet. So anyway.
I have to wonder why he says his sermon wasn't for the internet in any way when he posted his sermon on the internet, and it's still there on YouTube, on the church's channel.
One thing that he makes mention of a lot in this video is he references the new IFB. And I'll just say this really quick because I just want to make this video brief. I don't want to be a part of the new IFB. I'm not a part of the new IFB. And what I specifically mean by that is I don't want to have any affiliation with Steven Anderson, Roger Jimenez, Bruce Mejia, Aaron Thompson, Jonathan Shelley, none of those individuals.
Fritz has made a clean break with all of them. It also shows some changes on his church's website. The statement of faith used to look like this, but now it looks like this. The statement about homosexuality is gone. I doubt that Fritz has changed his mind about homosexuality being perfectly fine, but at least it's a step in the right direction. He no longer says that homosexuals should be executed, at least not on his website. What do you know? Fritz was pushed too far, and even he saw the hypocrisy of the NIFB. He might be human and have some level of empathy after all.
I don't like their spirit. I don't like the fact that they attack men of God. I don't like the fact that they call saved men unsaved and reprobates.
In the NIFB, calling someone a reprobate is a serious charge. It means that you are beyond even the reach of God and you cannot be saved. As you saw from the statement of faith, it's what he used to say about homosexuals. To call someone a reprobate in the NIFB would be like calling for a shunning in the Amish church or an excommunication in the Catholic.
I don't want to be around people that have a bad spirit. And I think these individuals, these guys, I think they have bad spirits. I think they have bad attitudes, and I don't want that affecting me at all. And so I don't want to have anything to do with them. You know, he talks about, me pretending to be their friends or whatever. I'm not their friend. Don't want to be their friend. Don't want any association, any affiliation with them.
Fritz is not alone. You know who else has left the NIFB? Tommy Mcmurtry. Yep, the preacher that Jimmy Snow made famous by asking if he was sexually attracted to pumpkins. His church is also out. As Anderson said, there are only a few left. Maybe we can help whittle down the ranks. Keep the spotlight on the bigotry and keep calling them out. While I wouldn't call Fritz an ally, I don't think he's changed his mind on the inferiority of women or that he thinks everyone in the LGBTQ community are all sinners on their way to hell, but at least he has provided us some insight into why the number of churches and pastors in the NIFB is dropping. The NIFB has taken down their webpage where they listed their member churches. Maybe it's because they keep having to drop more churches off.
Lost
Another church.
Master Obi-Wan has. How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
I mean, you have men that have preached against me. Jonathan Shelley preached against my wife, said that her hands need to be cut off.
That is some serious hate. The following Sunday, Anderson wasn't finished with Fritz. He preaches his sermon, A Wet Blanket on Soul Winning, to counter Fritz.
The sad thing is that there are Christians and even preachers that would make statements or teach doctrines that would, whether intentionally or unintentionally, throw a wet blanket on soul winning. Just dumb things that people say or dumb things that people teach that end up throwing a wet blanket on soul winning. And one of those things is this idea that if you're in sin, you shouldn't be soul winning. So then it can be pretty easy for somebody who maybe just doesn't feel like soul winning to think about the sins that they've done recently and say, well, I'm going to take kind of a moral high road and work on my sins instead and not go soul winning. It's so dumb, but
So Fritz is dumb.
Some people know what I'm referring to. There was a sermon that was preached last Sunday by this bozo preacher. Let me give you some quotes from this.
A bozo preacher.
So if your heart's not right, soul winning's not. Yes, it will fix it. Going out soul winning will make you a more loving person. It will fix your attitude. It will change your outlook on everything.
Talk about proving Fritz's point for him. You go out soul winning, yet you are a hate-filled little man. If going out soul winning could make you loving or fix your attitude, it sure didn't work for you. Next, I went in search of the sermon where Shelley said,
Jonathan Shelley preached against my wife, said that her hands need to be cut off.
The first thing I found was his sermon, Stay Away from Saul, where he preaches against Mcmurtry.
What was point one of why you would stay away from Saul? Because of persecution. Now, Pastor Tommy Mcmurtry and his wife have gone on Facebook and said all kinds of weird junk about me personally. I've seen it. I preached a sermon called Loud and Stubborn Women, and then on Tim DeLello's Facebook page, they're all sitting here mocking me, mocking my sermon, mocking the Word of God even. So much as to say, oh, I don't know why Jail didn't listen to Pastor Shelley's sermon, about how women aren't supposed to grab men by the secrets. I wish she had learned that instead of, actually rising up and slaying.
He accuses Mcmurtry and wife of saying nasty stuff on Facebook about the sermon Loud and Stubborn Women. That was the sermon on June 6th. The sermon is still on Facebook, but the comments have been removed.
That's why it's harmful to have railers in your church. But he's constantly talking trash on the new IFB, calling them bozos, railers, inbred, freaks. How would you feel if someone's sitting in the room just calling you all a bunch of inbred freaks and bozos and weirdos? And, when you call him out on this, he's like, oh, I'm talking about the ones that, are online or something.
Yep, definitely some fractures here.
And then he goes on all these new IFB bozos and these young new IFB punks and all these wannabe pastor punks. And he just makes comment after comment after comment after comment after comment where it becomes, wow, you must hate the new IFB, buddy.
Poor Tommy Mcmurtry. Anyone feel sorry for him yet? No? He had it coming? Yeah. Play with the fire of the NIFB and eventually get burned.
And look, anybody that's paid attention to anything or listened to this guy preach for a while, they could honestly admit, I've heard him speak a lot of crap on the new IFB. Even made a recent video with his wife explaining why he's not new IFB, and he doesn't like that terminology, and he doesn't want to be associated with the new IFB whatsoever, and he doesn't like people giving that label, because he's saying, oh, well, then people will harass me for every sermon that I preach is different than the new IFB. That's interesting, because you know what? Me and my friends that are in the new IFB differ on a lot of stuff. And I've never noticed anybody harassing and attacking me constantly for it.
Guess Shelley has a pretty thick skin. The comments are there. In fact, isn't that the point of this whole sermon? Poor me. People are picking on me for my sermons.
Now, my friend, Pastor Aaron Thompson, and I have known each other for a while, and we communicate on a regular basis. And he was dealing with an issue where he had 2 church members that were kind of causing him problems. He'd asked me to go preach in Hawaii, and so I'm asking about Hawaii, and he's got an evangelist there called Ryan Gallagher, okay? And Ryan Gallagher's causing him a lot of problems. Well, a few months ago, or a couple months ago, Ryan Gallagher and another evangelist, Chad Argon, start making attack videos against Pastor Thompson.
I found Ryan on Facebook calling out Thompson's sermon from April 22nd on 1 Corinthians 2, asking Facebook to take it down because he says that everyone with a lisp should.
But you know what? That doesn't matter to God. You know, obviously, if you have talk with a lisp or something, that's totally different. You shouldn't be preaching at all. You should be just hanging off, right?
In sanitized terms, he said that they should unalive. Despite this being reported to Facebook and YouTube, the sermon is still on both sites. So how is Shelley defending this?
Well, simultaneously, Mcmurtry's making a video about it. And he's bringing up all kinds of the same information and the same things. Not only in this video is he bringing up all kinds of weird stuff. And look, that's a fight between them two. But when I watched the video, it really disgusted me because of some of the things that Pastor Mcmurtry had said. He said he was making a video against Pastor Thompson, and this is a public video he made. And he said it's because he brought up his wife. And he said that's the ultimate coward move.
He glosses over the issues that Ryan has called out and returns to Mcmurtry.
Bring up his wife. Even though Jesus brings up women in the Bible, so I don't know if that's making Jesus a coward. Does that make Paul a coward?
And now we shift topic again. It's okay to make comments about a pastor's wife because Jesus talked about women in the Bible. How does that follow?
I was just like, wow. But you know what? That was between them. And even though I saw that a few months ago, I just left it alone because it's like, that's their fight. That's their issue. But you know what? It starts changing when all the information that Pastor Mcmurtry is using against Pastor Thompson is coming from a particular person named Ryan Gallagher. And then all of a sudden, Ryan Gallagher, out of nowhere, just starts attacking my church. I have nothing to do with this individual. Nothing.
Shelley has nothing to do with Gallagher, so Gallagher is out of the NIFB too. I went through half a dozen sermons by Shelley trying to find where he made the statement that Fritz claims. I can't find it. I don't doubt Fritz, as Shelley is certainly a hate-filled little man, a carbon copy of Anderson, that feels self-righteous about saying people should be injured or killed. I heard him proclaim a number of horrendous judgments on various people and groups while listening to all these sermons, but I could not find this specific one. One last clip in which Mcmurtry explains why his church isn't NIFB anymore.
I don't want to use the term new IFB just because of the fact that it's too specific. And what I mean by that is in the new IFB, there's not really any room for, variation. And a lot of that's because of the internet presence that it has, all these people that are on the internet, that they do not allow variation. And if you do vary, people take it really personal. So, I preach something that's a little different than the new IFB, and then I'm attacking the new IFB. And it's like, I'm not trying to attack the new IFB. I just don't believe like them on that stuff, And when I've had people in the new IFB that's gotten upset because of certain sermon clips I've shared, that's not what the new IFB stands for, but it's what my church stands for.
Then he explains his escape from Anderson.
you know, you should be able to just get away from one guy. But unfortunately, it's like, you know, you can't, you know, with that crowd. If you have any connection at all, you know, people are just accusing you of, you know, trying to split the movement, you know, infiltrate. Oh, you're just trying to stay friends with Pastor Anderson while not liking us too. Well, what if I like one pastor and I don't like another pastor?
And there you have it. It's amusing the way these pastors go on at each other, preaching sermons against each other, posting them publicly, and then complaining about other pastors doing the same thing. The good news is that the NIFB denomination, small as it is suffering from 3 of its pastors being fed up with all of the hatred. It's good to see these fractures. Mcmurtry is out. Fritz is out. And Gallagher is out. The web page with the list of member churches is gone. Hopefully, we can eventually see a falling out between Anderson and Shelley. That would likely be the end of the denomination, as Anderson would find himself where he belongs, alone in a corner where no one can hear his hate-filled rage. Maybe then even Anderson could be broken. Live your life.